went to the museum to see Pete Rose. They said he's in the museum across the street. I went to the museum to see Barry Bonds. They said he's in the museum across the street.
Hello and welcome to The Case for, a Baseball Hall of Fame podcast. I'm your host, attorney and baseball fan extraordinaire Russell Christian. That wonderful intro music you just heard means that today is a very special episode. It is my honor to welcome back critically acclaimed singer-songwriter, painter, novelist, and fellow baseball fan extraordinaire, Dan Bern. Dan and I had so much fun on episode 21, exploring the 2025 baseball ballot, that we decided this year to discuss the current 2026 Baseball Writers Association of America ballot. Fans of this podcast know I like to make the Hall of Fame case for players using my three-part analysis in which I look at stats, hardware, and the fame factor. To me, the fame factor is where the real fun, beauty, and poetry of the Baseball Hall of Fame discussion lies, and it's for that reason that I love to have writers, musicians, and artists on this podcast. So without further ado, let's hear Dan Bern and I break down the 2026 Baseball Writers Association of America ballot.
Let's see. Who do I have songs about that's on this list other than the ones that last year I did the entire list in song.
Yeah.
which I didn't get to this year. I'm just wondering who I have.
I was going to say, you don't have to write a new song every time you come on.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. You had Andy Pettit's on the list, and I guess we'll start with him. Yeah, you have your song, Come Back, Andy Pettit, from Doubleheader. So
right.
I figure there's no better place than let's just start with Andy Pettit. We'll just go through these guys one by one. What are your thoughts on Andy Pettit in the Hall of Fame?
Well, in general, when I know that there's a debate, and we talked about it quite a bit last time, the whole PED issue. And I know it's, especially when it comes around to Hall of Fame ballot time, it's a big thing on people's minds. Now, if I let that go, if I just put that aside for a minute, and if I look at this list, it becomes, to me, just, three names just stand out. And if we're talking about the truly, truly greats, who, if I go to Cooperstown and I go into that room where all the plaques are, and I want to see the greats of the game, I mean, it becomes very clear looking at it that way. There's three names on the list that, to my way of thinking, are Hall of Famers, okay? And that's A-Rod and Manny and Pettit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the list. That if I look at this list, those are the greats. Everybody else, get in line, and maybe get in line pretty far back. In fact, so I think maybe since we last talked, or maybe it was, I don't quite remember when it was, you probably do, but at some point they decided that Pete Rose was now, I guess because he's no longer with us, seems kind of a cruel joke in a way, but they decided that Pete Rose was eligible. And maybe when would he actually show up on the ballot?
From what I've seen, it's not going to be for a while because, and it's funny because I think I need to do a Pete Rose episode now. The way they have those, they used to call them the Veterans Committee. Now it's the Era Committee, and they've got them pretty much regimented over the next few years. So it would have to be, I know the Era Committee ballots break down by eras. So this year there was guys from like the 80s, 90s. Next year it's managers, umpires, which is always fun. So I'd have to double check. It's going to be one of those ballots in the next 5 years or so. And it's not a guarantee that he'll be on it because when you follow that, they'll list the names and there's like 25 names. And then they meet in a smoke-filled room essentially and pick like 6 guys that make the. So short answer to your question is he within the next 5 years, I believe one of those era committees is going to cover his era and he might be on there. And then,
I mean, I was surprised actually that because of that new ruling or whatever, I thought he was going to be on this list since he hadn't ever been considered before. I just figured he'd be on this list as well. In which case, by my way of thinking, you'd have A-Rod, Manny, Pettit, and Rose. That's
yeah,
that's your class.
it's uncharted territory here because normally you go onto a baseball writer's ballot right after you retire for 5 years, but I mean, he's been retired for what, 40 something years. So yeah,
Right.
it would be an era committee ballot. I guess he can't go on the baseball writers ballot because they have some pretty strict rules. There's more flexibility with those era committees, which is why, some people say, oh, they just vote their friends in. I'm like, well, there's a lot of overlooked players in baseball history. Not to get off on a soapbox, but the Hall of Fame, I want to say it was 36, 37, 38, 1938, somewhere in there. It was created and baseball had been around for, I mean, almost a century at that point. So there was a backlog of people getting in. It's a whole separate story, but yeah, the way that the Veterans Committee has been set up is to sort of look at some of the overlooked players, especially 19th century dead ball players in the Negro Leagues and stuff. A lot of deserving players that need to get in. So, throw Pete Rose in the mix.
Yeah.
And Pizza Guy, you have a song about, we talked about this in the last episode. I love your song. I'm trying to think of the line where it's Pete Rose calling from Tangiers, saying if I don't want
No, it was Shoeless Joe Jackson.
That's right. That's a shoe. That's
Calling
right.
from Tangiers.
That's right. Yeah. It's, if I'm not, or Pete's in, what have I been doing all these years? Yeah, it's a great one.
Yeah, he says what have I been doing all these years? Bagging groceries, painting houses, having to beg and steal and rob. He
Yeah.
tries to grab Seaver, says, I could tell you stuff about Ty Cobb.
Yeah. I love that one. A lot of crossover here with Dan Bern songs and the list here, but Pettit, yeah. I want to get back to Pettit a little bit. I want to start with him because you have your song "Come Back, Eddie Pettit." I agree. I think he's a Hall of Famer, apart from the PED issue. And to me, I don't know what you think, but Pettit is interesting because when we think of the steroid era guys, A-Rod, Bonds, Manny, these guys have video game stats. Clemens,
Right.
But then there's like this second tier of players that have either admitted or associated with that don't necessarily have the video game stats, and we're analyzing them just like we do other players because we're baseball nerds. And I put Pettit in that category with like Gary Sheffield and McGuire, where I'm hearing non-PED arguments for and against. I think we talked about this when you were on last time. Some people say, oh, Mark McGuire's batting average is too low. I'm like, come on. There's the only reason you're going to keep him out of the Hall of Fame is steroids. That's ridiculous. And I think the same thing with Pettit. He's got over, I think over 250 wins. He's got 5 rings with the Yankees. The guy was a stud.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the thing with him. When I think of the term big game pitcher,
yeah,
he's at the front of the line. I mean, you could say, well, he had an advantage because he was with a great team. And so that's why he was in the forefront so much. But you could say that about a lot of Yankees, really. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And there's also pressures that come with playing for that team and being in those situations. And I mean, time and time again, he was the guy that was on the mound when they needed a win, and time again, he came through. I mean, I don't know. There's just something very vivid in my memory of Pettit with him, with the cap pulled down low and that nose that looks like it's like Scottie Pippen. It's the same kind of. Same face, really, and his glove would be up there, and he was just unshakable. So I would put him with those other guys. Now, what about Clemens? He's not on this. He's not on the list at all, or has he already come and gone?
Yeah, so it's funny. Maybe we should take 2 steps back because back in December, the era committee voted Jeff Kent in the Hall of Fame, and Clemens and Bonds were on that ballot. And so it was interesting because we've seen the baseball writers ballot. I actually think a lot of the steroid guys are getting more traction on the baseball writers ballot, especially I think as younger journalists are out there voting that maybe, didn't grow up in the steroid era and don't remember it as, for what it is. But it was interesting that these era committee ballots, which are made up of players, coaches, executives, they didn't vote Bonds and Clemens in. So, kind of setting the tone for the future. I don't see these era committee ballots putting some of the steroid era guys in. So,
Yeah, I mean, well, if that's going to be the case, then I guess you chuck Ryan Braun off of this new list, because
we can cross him off. Yeah, he's on this list. We can cross him off. And that's the thing too. I did my ballot breakdown episode, and Ryan Braun had a good career, good stats, but I said, if you're going to start letting steroid guys in, there's a long line. There's a long list of like, Ryan, your stats you don't have Barry Bonds stats. You better get in line, buddy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think the whole thing is a little bit fluid, especially now with where gambling has basically been, fully embraced by the game and sponsored, sponsors the game. I know there's still guys, Class A guys getting in trouble for the prop bets and all that stuff.
Yeah, that was wild.
But I don't know. I maybe I've just gotten older, and I'm just tired of this fight and this constant not really knowing, and none of it's proven.
Yeah.
So I just kind of feel like, gosh, if Harold Baines, I love Harold Baines. I used to watch him in Chicago with the White Sox. I love that guy. I love Jeff Kent. But if we got Harold Baines and Jeff Kent, and we don't have Bonds and A-Rod and Clemens, it just starts to feel a little ridiculous.
A little bit,
it's like, what are we celebrating, really?
Yeah, it's crazy because I'm kind of with you. I've said this before on my podcast. I'm just kind of tired of the argument and the debate. I get it. And at the time, it was controversial. And, I think of that quote from the movie Lincoln. Daniel Day-Lewis says, "Time is a great thickener of things." I don't know if Lincoln actually said that or if it was just what they came up with the movie. But as time goes on, I kind of feel the same way as you, because at the end of the day, these are players we grew up with watching. And I still have fond memories of Mark McGwire and Jose Canseco and Barry Bonds. And these were players I watched. And I'm kind of with you. Like, I understand the Hall of Fame and the character clause, et cetera, but when I'm looking through my baseball cards or telling memories of baseball, those are the guys I talk about.
It's like, who did we go to the ballpark to see? Who did we get in line and pay money and stand up when they came up to the plate? And it feels a little bit hypocritical in a way to draw these lines and feel good about ourselves to keep this guy out or that guy out, and let this guy in, and we're trying to remember the greats of the game.
Yeah.
That's what this whole exercise is about, I think, so that these guys aren't forgotten. And if we don't put Beltran in the Hall of Fame, for example, if we don't put him in the Hall of Fame, he's not really going to be remembered. That's just 10, 20 years from now, we're not going to be talking about Carlos Beltran.
That's fair.
And to try to erase the very memory of these true giants of the game. I mean, how can you talk about Babe Ruth and Ohtani with any perspective if you don't have Bonds in there?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's funny you talk about Beltran because I've done an episode on him, and I've said then, I'll say it again. I think his stats are Hall of Fame worthy. But again, when you think of players from that era, that stand out as the Giants, he was kind of playing, I'm thinking in kind of Pujols and Miguel Cabrera's era. Like, those are kind of the guys that stand out for me as, the
Yeah,
Giants of that era.
that's
And
right.
and that's fine because, you mentioned Baines and, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s and I remember Baines and he was a good player, but I would never have said Harold Baines is the star of
Right.
that era.
Was he ever the best player on his team ever?
I don't think so. Maybe on the White Sox for some of those years.
Maybe a couple years.
Yeah, but he was a consistently very good player, and he's certainly, and that's what's interesting about the Hall of Fame. It's like there's multiple ways to get in. He's someone that had very good career stats and had a great reputation as a slugger, and that's kind of one way to get in. And that's sort of like Beltran. He's got some pretty impressive career stats. Before I forget, I've told you, I promise I won't quiz you on stats. I've got some stats in front of me. But, Beltran's one of only 4 players in Major League history with 2,500 or more hits, 400 or more home runs, 300 or more stolen bases, and 1,000 or more walks. The other 3 are, excuse me, Willie Mays,
Yeah.
A-Rod, and Barry Bonds. So
Right.
there you go.
That's okay. That's good company.
Yeah.
And he, longevity. He really. What did he play? 20 years. He
Yeah,
played a
like
long
20
time.
years. Yeah, exactly 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Played forever. And yeah, that's one of those things. I see him as a Hall of Famer because, you put up those stats and you're in that category. But I would agree with you. I talk about the fame factor on my podcast, which is why I love having artists and musicians and so sort of having the fame factor. I've mentioned this before in terms of the fame factor. Do people write songs about this guy? Is it someone that kids have?
Great point.
Yeah. I don't know if kids use lunchboxes anymore, but when we were growing up, you had a lunchbox with Steve Garvey or somebody on it, or something. I just never felt like Beltran had that notoriety. And in fact, the only notoriety he had was part of that Astros cheating scandal, which I think he got dinged a little bit from the voters, but he's going to get in. I mean, I'm not condoning what the Astros did, but a lot of players have basically said, "Hey, we've done worse and just didn't get caught." It's kind of part of the sign stealing. It's part of the game. I'm not defending
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah. I mean, I think in another era, what they did would have seemed, I almost want to say honorable or cute
yeah,
or quaint or something like with the, now they talk about the tipping off Bobby Thompson and the Giants when they were on that incredible run in 51, and nobody's going to go back and say that Mays shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because maybe he had some pitches being tipped when he was a rookie in 51.
yeah. And that's funny because that's a story that you hear about, but I would say you got to earn, the pitch tipping. There's a great story. I'm probably butchering it, but I think it was one of Mantle's last home runs. He was in, I believe it was Tiger Stadium. You heard this story? Yeah. And I forget
Was it McLean?
I think it was McLean. Yeah. And he pulled the catcher aside and said, "Hey, I'm going to grease him." And I think he said something to Mick, like, "Just look out."
I think he like nodded to Mick, like, "Here it comes."
Yeah, and Mick, I've seen some interviews with Mickey, and like 2 or 3 went by, and Denny's like, "Dude," so he was like, "Oh, this is legit." And then the next pitch hit like a 600 foot, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the prologue, I think it was Billy Martin or Pepitone or someone came up after him and did this, like, "Oh, throw it here," and then like he didn't even claim threw right at his head. Yeah. So, but it's like it's Mickey Mantle, and the whole thing was like, this is his last time here. I think they were, the Tigers were probably already losing or winning, and it's a solo home run. Who cares? But yeah, you have to earn that pitch tipping. You don't get that for anyone.
Well, they talk about the Astros thing, that it was a different level of cheating because they were using, modern technology.
Yeah.
But that's just because they had it. I mean, in 51, they didn't have that, so they had a guy in the stands, with a flashlight or whatever. And they in the 60s they didn't have PEDs, they had pep pills.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
they were gobbling those by the handful.
Yeah.
Um, as time moves along, and all the everything, our science changes, and the way we cheat
Yeah.
changes. But I don't know. I in looking at the list, before we did this, and in thinking about it, I don't know, something in me just kind of shifted, and it's like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah.
What are we why are we saying, A-Rod no, Manny no, Omar Vizquel maybe?
Yeah.
And I love Vizquel, and he's actually higher on my list than a lot of guys, just because I mean, he was a good hitter, but he was a wizard in the field,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
way above most guys. And as a shortstop, I give him a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, and it's funny you brought. I think we were running out of time last time, and you brought up Vizquel, so I'm glad you mentioned him. I'm gonna jump to him because I have said this before. I'll say it again. I think on the numbers, he's absolutely a Hall of Famer. He's here. I want to get my numbers right. If I remember off the top of my head, I believe he's the all-time leader in games played at shortstop, which,
Wow.
if my memory serves me correctly, I did an episode about Jesse Orosco, who's the all-time leader for games played at pitcher, and I believe that
Mm.
Vizquel and Jesse Orosco are the only two players to have the most career games at the position and not be in the Hall of Fame. I'm gonna have to double check that because it might include some PED guys, but I believe that's accurate. So, Hall of Fame voters, if you're out there listening, all-time leader of games played at shortstop. He's, I'm sorry, bear with me. I'm going to read it off because I want to make sure we got the right stats. He
Yeah.
is all-time leader for double plays turned and fielding percentage at shortstop. Third
Mm.
all-time in career putouts at shortstop, and he's got 2,877 hits, almost
Jeez.
3,000. Yeah, a ton of hits, and he was part of that 90s Cleveland team. We could talk
Yeah.
about this. I mentioned this on my last podcast, and I've done a Kenny Lofton episode. That 90s Cleveland franchise was stacked, and I believe Tomei is the only guy from that era to get
Wow.
in. Omar
That sounds
Vizquel's
right.
not in, Kenny Lofton's not in, Albert Bell. Like, think how good those guys
Wow.
were. It's just strange.
That was a hell of a team.
Yeah.
I think they're the ones that rattled Knobloch into throwing the ball away in game 3 of
Yeah.
I think it was 98 in that
Yeah.
in that series.
Yeah, I shouldn't laugh. Yeah, that was him and what's the guy? Mackie Sasser from the Mets, two of the famous Yips players. Yeah, it's scary, man. But yeah, they were
Yeah.
great. They were a great team, and I think that Vizquel. I mean, I'll say it now. I think he should be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
those everything you read off would look real good on a plaque, I gotta say.
Yeah, he's had some off-field issues, which I don't want to get into, but and that's what's interesting too. It's sort of a part of the greater argument you're talking about. The character clause thing can be very arbitrary.
Yeah.
Um, they're not. It's not the hall of ethics, and a lot of these ball players, especially in the old days, I mean, they were hard drinking and
Hmm.
womanizing, and there was racism in the early day. I mean, there's none of a lot of these players. A lot of the ones that are in the Hall of Fame are they're not saints.
No. And back in the 1800s and early 1900s, I mean, baseball was really kind of looked down upon as a
Yeah,
profession. It's like, don't come home with a ball player.
yeah,
It was just one step ahead of a thief. Those guys were, we're not we're not really celebrating, as you say, it's not the Hall of Saints.
yeah. I mean, look at Babe Ruth. It's funny. My wife gave me a book about Mo Berg, the catcher. Chuck Brodsky has a great song about Mo Berg, the catcher. There's a great story in the book about Mo Berg about him and Babe Ruth. at a geisha house in Japan. And Babe Ruth wasn't behaving himself. Let's just say that. Nobody's ever going to say Babe Ruth shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, the guy, he wasn't a saint, but I don't think you're going to find a person in the world that says, well, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. So it's interesting. So all I want to say, I don't want to get into off-field issues with Omar Vizquel, but there's some stuff people can Google it, and there's some stuff. It's like, okay, and I think the voters are just kind of like, let me. Maybe he needs a PR team. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably pretty. If you wanted to bypass him,
Yeah.
you could, because he's not. He didn't hit 30, 40 homers a year. He didn't hit 320. But man, if I was going to start a team and he was available at shortstop, I wouldn't hesitate.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I feel like Ozzie Smith is considered the gold standard for defensive shortstops. And
Yeah,
Ozzie Smith's one of the greatest.
yeah.
Omar Vizquel is arguably, I mean, it's apples and oranges. The stats I just mentioned, he's up there. But I think he's significantly better offensively than Ozzie Smith was. He's got more hits, a higher batting. He was a better hitter than Ozzie Smith.
Wow.
So,
And I mean, as a glove guy, he's certainly in the club.
oh, he's one of the greatest. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Vizquel for the Hall of Fame, but I get it. Voters want to have character clause, small field issues. I don't want to get into that, but I think on the stats, he gets in. That's my thought. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, Ricky Henderson passed, I think in this past year, and obviously he's one of the all-time greats. But imagine if he had been tainted with something and they left him out. That's the same as leaving some of these other guys out. I have like a thought experiment of a alternate museum across the street from the Hall of Fame, with Bonds in there and Clemens in there and Rose in there, and it's like, I don't know, maybe that's the museum I want to go see.
Yeah. Isn't that one of your songs on the across the street, the Hall of Fame of
The museum across the street, yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
The museum across the street. Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. Oh man. Well, yeah. So if we don't get to everyone on the list, it's okay. But I wanted to hit some of the highlights. We talked about Pettit. We kind of talked about Beltran. I'm curious, since we're talking about fielders, what's your thoughts on Andrew Jones?
Yeah.
I've got my Braves gear on, but you're not gonna upset me if you don't think he is. So I have thick skin.
Well, it kind of depends on the standard.
Yeah.
If we're bypassing Manny and Pettit and A-Rod, then I kind of feel like everybody on this list can go pound sand, in a way.
Yeah.
That's I looked favorably on Beltran, and I looked favorably on Vizquel and everybody else, just in that context.
Yeah.
I just felt, and it's maybe unfair to just look at it in that context, but I kind of felt like everybody else is so far behind that, it's like, but make the case for Jones.
He's one of only 4 players with 10 Gold Gloves and 400 career home runs, and the others are Willie Mays, Ken Griffey Jr., and Mike Schmidt. So I'll tell you a funny story. I've got my Dale Murphy jersey on. I was at a Braves game earlier this year. I've talked about this in the podcast, and Dale Murphy was there. So he was like my favorite player growing up. And Dale Murphy follows the podcast, and I said, hey, you follow my account. We talked about the podcast. And he's such a humble guy. I said, Dale, you belong in the Hall of Fame. And he changed the subject. He said, well, what about Andrew Jones? Because he's a humble guy, didn't want to talk about himself. And I said, and other people have said this, so I don't want to take credit for it. I said, Dale, Andrew is like Ozzie Smith with power. And he was like, yeah, all right, Ozzie. He liked it. So Dale Murphy liked that argument. For what that counts, he doesn't get a vote in the Hall of Fame. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, Dale Murphy definitely should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
That's without question. How many Gold Gloves does Vizquel have?
Omar Vizquel has 11 Gold Gloves.
11. So
Yeah.
Jones is right there
Yeah. Andrew
with power.
Jones. Yeah.
Um,
And he played center field. And again,
yeah.
this is why I like to talk about the fame factor. I know you're a huge Willie Mays fan. I'm a big Willie Mays fan. I can't see it, but I've got a Willie Mays ornament on my baseball Christmas tree back there. It's way back. You can't see it. But Willie Mays himself has said that Andrew Jones was the best center fielder of all time. So for whatever,
Wow.
yeah.
That's that's I mean on who are you gonna argue with Willie Mays?
No,
No.
yeah. And maybe Willie was just being modest too, but defensively Andrew was great. And I like talking about Andrew because I think it's an interesting scenario that you see with a lot of players, especially when it comes to Hall of Fame voting, is here's a guy like the first 10 years of his career was just lights out, and then, hit his early 30s and father time comes for us all. I mean, I quit playing sports in high school, I can't imagine playing professional sports in your 30s, and his body sort of wore down and the decline was quick. So everyone remembers the decline as opposed to the peak. And you think of players like Koufax or Kirby Puckett, who injuries caused them to retire early. They get in the Hall of Fame first ballot. You know,
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take.
Well, I mean, yeah. That the Koufax peak is Mount Everest.
Yeah. I've said something before on the pod. I said if you're going to give someone the Koufax or Puckett treatment, you better be damn good. This isn't just hey, this guy's pretty good for 5 years. I'm like, you need to be the best ever.
Yeah. Or it's a Thurman Munson situation.
Yeah. I'm going to do an episode. Well, we're getting off the list, but I'm glad you brought that up because Buster Posey is going to be on the ballot next year. I'm going to do an episode about I'm going to do my first dual episode. I'm going to talk about Buster Posey and Thurman Munson because if you look at their stats, the World Series rings, the awards they've won, it's eerily identical. I mean,
wow.
So if you're going to make the argument for Buster Posey, you can't make the argument for Buster Posey without putting Thurman Munson in the Hall of Fame. And of course, the fact Thurman died, Buster Posey retired, and then Thurman probably could have played a few more years. So,
yeah. Well, Thurman's in, isn't he?
No, he's not in the Hall of Fame.
He's not?
No, shocking. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, shocking.
Oh, I thought. Wow. In my mind, they put him in even before his waiting period after that happened. Wow.
No, they should have. They absolutely should have. And while we're on the topic,
I mean, those two, very, very similar careers, and the fact that they were the anchor of championship teams, is definitely in their favor.
Yeah, at one of the two most important positions in the game, catcher and pitcher. I pulled Thurman Munson's stats up here. He was an MVP, a Rookie of the Year, 7-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glove winner, 2-time World Series champ. Only played 11 years because he died. And from what I've heard of the story, that plane crash, he not only did he pass, but it's grim. I don't want to get into it, but I think from what I've heard, he was trying to save other people, and So I mean, tragic death, and I think he should have gotten the Clemente treatment. They should have put him in right away. I think if that had happened now, I think he would have been in right away.
You would think so. I'm actually quite shocked that Munson isn't in. I assumed he was.
Yeah,
but I definitely think Posey should be. But put them both in.
No, and that's the thing. I don't think that Posey shouldn't. I'm just sort of very much like you're going to put Buster in. I don't want to get off on the rabbit hole right now, but if you line their stats up and their MVPs and their World Series, I mean, it's identical. It's eerily identical.
I can't even imagine why Munson wouldn't be in.
Yeah, and I've always had a connection with Thurman Munson. He died within a few days of my birth.
Oh, wow.
I'm not trying to get all spiritual or whatever, but I remember like my mom saving newspapers from when I was born and stuff. And I was a kid, and all the newspapers were just Thurman Munson, Thurman Munson, and I was like, who's Thurman Munson? So
Wow.
anyway, I'll do an episode about Thurman Munson. I might use your soundbite there. Dan Bern wants Thurman in the Hall of Fame. We talked about this last time. Chase Utley. I got to put people on the spot. I think last time you were a no on Chase Utley. Any thoughts on whether Chase Utley belongs to the Hall of Fame?
I know that he was really revered in Philly, and
Yeah.
obviously that's where his best years were. By the time he came to the Dodgers, um, he was famous for tripping people as they as they went towards second base and
Yeah.
starting near riots in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it, it starts to feel like, what are we doing here? Is this the Hall of the Very Good, or is
Exactly.
this the Hall of the truly great? And again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I feel like, man, we're leaving out the titans of the game,
Yeah.
and pushing them aside as though they never even existed.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, the things Pete Rose did on the field will never be touched.
No.
Get 200 hits for 20 straight years, and you still got a good ways to go. So I don't know. So in that context, um, you know, I wouldn't put Chase Utley in.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I'll say this: if you get on social media and stuff, like the baseball nerds like me that love to talk about this stuff on social media, Chase Utley's Hall of Fame case is like the most controversial. You want to start like pissing people off. It's a hot topic. It's fun. I call it the Great Chase Utley debate, but I just don't see it. And I don't want to put him on the spot or embarrass him, but I had Chuck Brodsky on the show. He's a diehard Phillies fan. He was talking about growing up in Philly, going to Phillies games with his dad. And I said, Chuck, I got to put you on the spot. Chase Utley. And he's like, yeah, I don't see it. I'm like, you heard it, folks. And
What's the argument for?
the best argument I've heard is, well, the best arguments I've heard are very analytical based. And that's why I think he's sort of a lightning rod, because it's a generational thing. When you start looking at a lot of the advanced stats and the stuff that puts some of us to sleep, there's nothing wrong with the advanced stats and the Moneyball type stats.
Yeah.
He's really impressive in a lot of the advanced categories. My counter to that is that some of those things like WAR are weighted by position, and they tend to favor second baseman because second basemen are traditionally light hitting. I also feel like I've said this before. You're scraping the bottom of the statistical barrel to come up with he's got. Let me. People will say, let me recite off 6 stats you've never heard before that will make his case, and I'm like, I'm not saying he's bad, and that gets to kind of what you're saying is with regard to the Hall of Fame. We aren't general managers trying to find value. I'm not saying, hey, Dan, we can sign Utley. He's not as sexy as this guy with a lot of home runs, but he's going to give our team more value, and we'll get more wins out of him for less money. That's kind of what Moneyball is about. Whereas I feel like the Hall of Fame is, big stats, home runs, hits, RBI, MVPs, World Series rings, stuff like that. And I just
and if we're because kind of what we're doing when we're considering Hall of Fame is considering against history, right?
Yeah.
Considering guys against, guys who were playing in the 60s or in the 40s or in the 80s, and they didn't have those stats then.
Yeah.
They weren't measuring them that way. So, I mean, I know they do that particularly with like MVP voting.
Yeah.
And Cy Young. That's why Lincecum won a couple of Cy Youngs with stats that I don't think would have, raised too many eyebrows in the 60s.
Yeah. DeGrom too. There's a lot of advanced stats in his favor. Yeah.
Yeah, but so to, as you say, kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel statistically, seems a little a little off to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, I'm old. I remember I remember Mays. At least, yeah, I remember him vaguely with the Giants, but certainly with the Mets. But that's a long time ago.
Sure. Yeah. I know you've got a lot of songs about the Giants, and I just wanted to ask you. I don't know if I've ever asked you if you have a favorite team. I know you've got songs about a lot of players and a lot of teams.
Yeah.
You're kind of like me in there. I mean, I'm a Braves fan. I grew up in Atlanta, but I have my
Yeah.
wife's like, how many hats do you have? I'm like, I like a lot of teams. I like
Yeah,
baseball.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like that. I'm kind of a nomad. I grew
Yeah.
up in Iowa where, it was kind of like we were all free agents in terms of what teams
Yeah.
we followed. There were a lot of Cubs fans. I read a book about Mays probably the week before I read the Koufax book. So I was a Giants fan rather than a Dodgers fan at that time. And with the exception of 5 years when I lived in Chicago and I lived close enough to Wrigley to hear Harry Carey out my window in the seventh inning. So I went to a lot of Cubs games and I was fully Cubs in that time. And then I moved to Los Angeles, but I kept with the Giants until like my third stint in LA. I was living a 5 minute walk from Chavez Ravine. Vin was on the radio every night, and my daughter was born, and we started going to the games. And Puig came in, and he was fun
Yeah.
and exciting. And at some point, I just said, I'm not fighting this anymore. So since about 2013, probably, I've been a Dodger fan, and I've lost friends over this with the Northern Californians. I actually have.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can be a Dodgers and another team's fan. It's tough to be a Dodgers and a Giants fan.
Yeah. Although I think I'm primarily a fan of the rivalry, which
It's great.
if
Yeah.
we talk about rivalries, I think it's head and shoulders above any other rivalry, really, in sports. Not just because of how heated it's been for such a long time, but the fact that it survived and thrived over both teams moving 3,000 miles. I mean that's
Yeah.
unprecedented. So I justify this this Dodger Giant thing by saying that I'm a fan of the rivalry.
It is a great rivalry. I gotta say too, you're curious. You spent a lot of time in Southern California. The Dodgers Padres rivalry in recent years has been incredible. It's really heated up. I mean, they were throwing at Otani. It was
Oh
getting
yeah,
ugly the past couple
yeah.
seasons. So I know it's
Well,
not as big. Yeah.
I think the Giants better get their act together because their half of the rivalry is getting usurped now.
Yeah, yeah. The past couple of years, it's definitely been hotter, the Padres Dodgers, but historically, absolutely, yeah. It's
Yeah.
great that they brought that from New York all the way out here. I like to watch interviews with Will Clark, and he still talks trash about the Dodgers. I'm like, dude, you played like 40 years ago, but it's in his blood, He's got it.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Giants, I was going to ask you. There's two guys I want to talk about before I forget. One is on the ballot for the first time, and that's Hunter Pence, one of the Giants. I mean, I like the guy. I liked him with the Giants, but I don't see him in the Hall of Fame. Do you have any memories of Hunter Pence or any thoughts on Hunter Pence?
Oh, well, I loved Hunter Pence.
Yeah.
I was still full on Giants when I spent a couple of summers in the early aughts, '04 and '05 in San Francisco. And, he was a big part of that team, a real, yeah, a real energy guy, a guy that could, you know, kind of lift the whole team, excuse me, kind of like Will Clark.
Yeah.
Um, but, it's not screaming Hall of Fame to me.
Yeah, I don't see it. Another guy I definitely wanted to ask you about these two guys because the next one here to me is one of the faces of West Coast baseball to me from this era, and that's Matt Kemp, who's on the ballot for the first time, and started off his career as someone that you're like, yeah, this guy could be in the
Yeah.
Hall of Fame, and then he wasn't as bad as Anthony Rendon, but he was always hurt and stuff like that.
Yeah.
it's interesting. In 2011, I mentioned this on my last podcast. He was second in the MVP voting to Ryan Braun, who was using PEDs. Matt Kemp was like zero point zero 0.01, I think, points away from a batting title. He led the league in home runs and RBIs, so he was literally like one or two hits away from a triple crown.
Oof.
He also stole 40 bases and hit 39 home runs. So in an alternate timeline, he gets a couple more hits. One of them's a home run. He's got a triple crown and a 40-40 season. Definitely probably wins the MVP at that point. And, we'd still be talking about Matt Kemp in 2011. So
yeah, no, he was all world. I mean, he's had Hall of Fame seasons, as you said. They just were way too few. I remember somewhere around that time, I got to go take batting practice at Dodger Stadium one afternoon. A friend of mine was kind of in good with them, and so
it's a good friend. Yeah.
Yeah, and so we before we hit, we took a lap around the ballpark into the outfield, and Matt Kemp was jogging, and he was rehabbing, as he generally was.
Yeah.
And we felt like, we're just ball players, just like Matt Kemp, putting in our work.
Exactly.
But I mean, we loved him, but I mean, no fault of his, I'm sure, but the body just didn't hold up.
Yeah, to me, he's a huge what if. I mean, the scenario I just put out, Triple Crown, 40-40, okay, like he didn't get that, but that season in 2011 was outstanding. The two seasons before that, the 2012 season, he started out on a tear, and that's when the injuries started. It's like there's a lot of what ifs had they stayed healthy. I could see a scenario in which Matt Kemp stays healthy, and we'd be talking about him, in the Hall of Fame. He's got 287 career home runs and 1,031 RBI, which is impressive, but he stays healthy. He's got 350, 400 home runs, I think, and we're looking at maybe a Hall of Fame career. So that's.
I mean, if he had had 6 seasons like the one you mentioned, he'd be Mike Trout at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if Mike Trout retired today, he's a Hall of Famer, right?
Oh, he was already a couple years ago. I know he's been hurt and stuff, but he's a 3-time MVP, and he's a Hall of Famer for sure. Yeah, I know I'm probably not alone, but I would love to see a fully healthy Trout next year. I mean, I'm not expecting him to be as good as he was in his prime, but just play. Because even when he's struggling and even when his batting average is low, he's still got the power. I mean, he's such a muscular, strong guy. There was a couple seasons ago, I think he only played like 100-something games. He still hit like 40-something home runs. It's like, he's able to pull magic out of places that most guys can't. He's so good.
I mean, we'll never know. We'll never know with that guy. Just what the peak could have been.
Sure.
With any healthy longevity. I mean, the names that were being thrown around in his great years, were Ted Williams, names like that.
Yeah, I hope he's healthy next year. But before I move on, I can't not follow up. You took batting practice at Dodger Stadium. I'm curious who was throwing to you? Was it your friend throwing to you, or like actual Dodgers pitchers?
It was the bench coach, guy named Trey Hillman, who actually had managed the Royals for a couple of years before they got really good. But he was on. Mattingly was the manager.
Okay.
And in fact, McGuire was the hitting coach, and he was walking around. He took pictures with us. I'll never forget. We're taking pictures with McGuire. I mean, how many people have taken pictures with McGuire? And he smiled like it was the first time he had ever been asked to have his picture taken, and it really, I never forgot that. And anytime, I'm not on that level, obviously, but if I'm after a show and somebody wants their picture taken, I always think of McGuire, and I always do my best to really be present for that.
That's cool.
But anyway, Trey Hillman was throwing. He grooved us some beauties, and we all hit some nice ropes that would have been hits in a game. And Mattingly was standing behind the cage watching us. He didn't sign any of us up, which was a surprise, but
Yeah.
he did watch us, and I had to go and ask him something. So I said, "Hey, you ever get in there and hit any yourself these days?" And he said, I had my shot.
Yeah, that's
So
funny.
that was cool.
Yeah, I know Mattingly had the back problems. I would imagine if he tries to get in there and hack, he might be worried he's going to pull something.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing too. I'm curious. Were you able to get a piece of any of the balls? You get any good hits during the batting
Oh
practice?
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we're getting nice pitches down the middle, and
Nice.
yeah, I think we all came away feeling pretty good.
Very cool. They grooved you, Dan. You got the groove treatment.
I got the
You and
Danny
the Mick.
McClain, Mickey Mantle
Yeah,
treatment.
that's right. Only reserved for the select few. You got it. You got it. You've made it, Dan. You got grooved. We're getting short on time, so if there's anyone else on the list you wanted to talk about, we don't. I'll just say this, and you can agree, disagree, or talk about. But to me, all of the guys that are on the ballot this year for the first time, I'm not
Hmm.
alone in sharing this. I've said it before. I don't see any of them getting into the Hall of Fame. Certainly not this year, probably ever. The
Yeah.
only person I kind of predicted to maybe get in the Hall of Fame one day would be Cole Hamels,
Hmm.
who, had some great years with the Phillies. He was a hero in that 2008 offseason, but, without getting into the weeds of his career stats, he doesn't really have the career stats. Although, wins aren't as important anymore, and he has 163 wins, a 3.43 ERA, 2,560 strikeouts. I mean, a great career.
Did he have a Cy Young?
He did not have a Cy Young. He was a four-time All-Star. And in 2008, when they won the World Series, he was the NLCS MVP and the World Series MVP. So a dynamite postseason. I've raised this issue too. If I kind of compared him to Oral Hershiser, they have similar stats, and Hershiser was lights out that '88 season. But
Yeah.
I think Hershiser has a better Hall of Fame case than Cole Hamels. So
I would say so. What do you
yeah.
think about King Felix?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about King Felix. I'm glad you said that. I did an episode about King Felix, and I'm on the fence. Let's pull up his stats because I think he's got about 2,500 strikeouts too. I think he will get in the Hall of Fame.
I
Um,
wouldn't be surprised. I could see. He's only. This is his only second year. I feel like his reputation is pretty strong, and I feel like there was 3 4 year period at least where he was kind of considered, very very top echelon
yeah,
guys.
yeah. I'm looking here between 2009 and 2015. This is just his Cy Young rankings. In 2009, he's second. In 2010, he wins. In
Mm,
2012, he's fourth.
mm,
2013, he's eighth.
mm.
2014, he's second again. 2015,
Wow.
he's seventh. So top 10 finish for basically 10 years in a row. I mean, that's a
Yeah.
pretty, it's not Koufaxian, but
No.
nobody is, And
No.
he's got a
He
perfect
had a
game.
no hitter, or did he
He
had
had
a
a perfect
perfect
game.
game?
Perfect
A
game,
perfect
yeah.
game. Wow.
Which, yeah, I think he's going to get in. And if you look, he led the league in wins, WAR, ERA twice, win loss percentage. He's got a lot of black ink, as they call it.
Yeah.
Led the league in a lot of things. He's got
Yeah.
169 wins, 2,524 strikeouts. Wins aren't as really important anymore. He's got just under 50 for a career WAR, which is good. It's better than a lot of
Uh-huh.
players in the Hall of Fame. So I
And
was. Go ahead.
this is probably not a negligible thing too. He had a great nickname.
King Felix, baby, yeah. And they had the King's Court there, cheering him on. I think in my episode I was kind of I'd have to go back and listen. I think I was initially a no. I'm coming around on King Felix, and I'd be okay with him getting in, and I think I'd vote for him,
Yeah,
especially now that we're kind of. Sometimes you look at it a couple different times and it sinks
yeah,
in.
yeah,
I had forgotten about that really intense peak between
yeah.
2009 2015. I mean, he was dynamite.
I mean,
Um,
on this list, his name pops. It
yeah, his
definitely
name
pops.
definitely pops. And there's the fame factor, there's the stats, there's some hardware. And it's like, what more do you want? I mean, nobody can pitch. Not everybody's Nolan Ryan. Not everyone can pitch
Right.
27 years or something. If you've got, I, I've said this before kind of with anyone in the Hall of Fame, if you've got a 10-year peak, to me, like 10 years of being one of the best, if not the best in the game,
Yeah.
that's kind of like my criteria, which not to change the subject, but like Andrew Jones, he had like the first 10 years lights out, great defender, great offensive, plummeted. But I'm like, he had that 10-year stretch. There's some pitchers, you mentioned Lincecum, he had a shorter peak. Or
Yeah.
remember Johan Santana? There was like 4 years where Johan Santana was the greatest pitcher on the planet. And then he's gone, So,
Yeah.
uh,
Another thing with Felix, um, you know, the game has changed, and there's not that many. My sense is that he went deep into the games
yeah.
when he was starting, and that's pretty rare now.
Yeah, I'm looking at his stats in 2010. The Mariners, he led the league in innings pitched 249. I mean, that's almost two. That's pretty insane. That's especially by today's standards. And he had 8 seasons of 200 or more innings. Yeah, 6 complete games in 2010. I mean, that's unheard of. 25
It's kind of a
complete.
throwback at this point.
Yeah, 25 complete
Yeah.
games for his career, which is I mean, back in the '70s, Steve Carlton would throw 25 complete games in a season or
In a
something. But
season. I
yeah,
know.
yeah. But by today's standards, yeah, 25 complete games, 11 shutouts. He led the league in shutouts twice. So yeah, the dude was getting mileage, and he was pitching for maybe some bad Seattle teams that said you can go another inning, right, King Felix.
Yeah. I know we may be short on time, but tell us about Abreu.
I think again, he's sort of like Beltran, and I know I like to do these. He's one of X players, but Bobby Abreu, one of 7 players with 900 or more extra base hits, 400 or more stolen bases. The others are Ty Cobb, Honus Wagner, Tris Speaker, Barry Bonds, Craig Biggio, and Paul Molitor. So I'm like, that's
Wow.
pretty
That's a crazy list.
Yeah. Born in Venezuela. He's signed when he was 14. He had a career 291 average. I mean, I'll say this I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. That body of work I just mentioned
Yeah.
is there. I would agree he's like Beltran in that if he's not in the Hall of Fame in 20 years, maybe we don't remember. His name doesn't pop,
Right. Right.
but he's got the stats. And I'll tell you a personal funny story. Out here in Vegas, they're now the Aviators. It's the AAA team for the A's, but they used to be the Area 51s, which is a way better name. And they were for a few years they were the Mets AAA team, and they played at Cashman, which is an old stadium downtown. And it's great. I love going to minor league games because you see up and coming players and you see kind of players down on the other side. And I saw Bobby Abreu when he was trying to make a comeback. And I'd have to pull up the stats, but my recollection was that he was 4 for 4 with 2 doubles and 2 home runs. And we
Wow.
were like, this dude is too good for the minor league.
Yeah.
He's what they call a quad A player. Like maybe was just a step off of playing in the majors, but when they sent him to AAA, it's like he was lights out. So I know that's not as good as a story as he was 40 and hitting home runs off Clemens or something, but that was my recollection was this guy's pretty incredible at
He
the
was
end
a
of his career.
stud, Abreu. What
Yeah,
about
he was.
what about Rollins?
Jimmy Rollins, so it's funny. I have said this before to other people. I think I'd put Jimmy Rollins in the Hall of Fame before I put Chase Utley. He's got an MVP.
I
I
would too.
Yeah, I see, especially because I know voters like to sort of pluck guys from dynasties, and that 2000s Phillies team was a dynasty. They had their World Series. I would say that Rollins over Utley. You'll appreciate this as a musician. I've made this analogy before. Nobody gets it. You'll get it, hopefully. I saw Utley as the third best player in the team. At the time of that Phillies dynasty, I would say Ryan Howard was the best player in the team. There's another guy, kind of like Kemp, like seemed like he had a Hall of Fame career and then just went down.
He was the heart of that. Yeah, he was the heart of that lineup.
He was a slugger. He was an MVP. I would say Howard was the best player. Jimmy Rollins was the second best player, and that Chase Utley was the third best player. And the analogy I use, I don't know if you're a drive-by truckers fan. I saw them in concert a few months ago. It's Patterson Hood's band. He kind of started, he's the main songwriter. But then the other guy in the drive-by truckers is, I think it's Mike Cooley. He writes more country songs. I like Cooley's songs better than Patterson's songs because I like country music. And then there was a period where they had Jason Isbell in the band. Of course, he's an incredible songwriter. Yeah. So I kind of joke, I'm like, Patterson Hood's the third best songwriter in his own band,
Right.
So, and I like Patterson Hood's songs. It's a joke. They're just jokes, people. Don't get upset.
Where is Ryan Howard on this?
Well, he's not on the ballot anymore. He's gone. I believe he was a one and done. But wow. I call Chase Utley the Patterson Hood of the 2000 Phillies. I'm like, he's the third best player, So anyway,
I would definitely put Howard above Utley.
Oh yeah,
and probably Rollins. Although I don't have his lifetime stats, so maybe he fell off the table. But man, when they were really good, he was the heart of that team. It seemed like.
Yeah, he was. Let's pull up Ryan Howard here real quick. He was, I believe, a rookie of the year. Yeah, he's a rookie of the year and an MVP. He had 2 seasons leading the league in home runs, including that 58 home run season. He's got 4 seasons of 40 or more home runs. Led the league in RBIs 3 times.
Whoa.
Yeah, the guy was a stud, but only played 13 years. And, 382 home runs, but a career 258 average. 1,475 hits. So the career stats aren't really there except for the home runs.
Yeah.
I was going to say
this used to be easy. It's like 500 homers, you're in. 250 wins or 300 wins, you're in. Those were the benchmarks, and that's not where we're at anymore.
Well, it's interesting because we're talking about Dale Murphy, who was on the ballot this year. I thought he was going to get in. I thought Murphy and Mattingly were going to get in. Jeff Kent is deserving. He got in, but I'm still mad about Murphy. There was a time when it was
Kent over Murphy and Mattingly seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there was a time when you kind of had to hit those counting stats to get in. And for that reason, there were a lot of players that almost hit them that were deserving. I think of like Steve Garvey. Like you look at his stats, like, like how is this guy not in the Hall of Fame? Well, he didn't get 3,000 hits. Well, so I'm a fan of like, hey, the counting stats aren't the only way to get in. But then you look at guys like Utley or, some of these guys in the list, and it's like, well, there's still kind of a minimum qualification, I feel like, at some point. And that's why, not to nerd out on it, that's why this is such a fun debate, because there's no set formula, with the exception of I would say 3,000 hits and 500 home runs and 300 wins or something. Apart from that, it's kind of the Wild West, and that's
How many players are in right now? Do you know?
In the Hall of Fame, like in general?
Yeah.
279 players, 352 total members, because that's going to include coaches, umpires, things like that. But 279. Does that
include the broadcasters?
So 352, yeah, would include broadcasters, coaches, umpires, but only 279. I heard a stat somewhere that all of the players that have ever played Major League Baseball would not even fill up one stadium. It's like 30,000 or 40,000 people or something, And of them under 300, That just
Or in
goes
the
to show
hall.
you it's 0.01 of the 1%. You got to have something special, yeah,
Yeah.
statistically on the hardware, and that's why I like to invoke this fame factor and talk to musicians, artists. Like, is there something special about this person that just in an intangible quality to a player that you just say, yes, that person belongs in the Hall of Fame. And I'm kind of with you. Like, even though I think like Abreu and Beltran have the stats, they don't necessarily have that same zing, whatever you want to call it, as like an A-Rod or a Manny.
I mean, if they drop the whatever you want to call it, and let those really, really, really great players in that they feel are tainted, then I think I'd feel better about considering the Beltran and the Abreu.
Yeah.
Honestly, it starts you start to get a bit of a grudge against some of these guys when these other guys are held out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, as again, I'm wearing my Dale Murphy jersey. I've been wanting Dale Murphy to get in the Hall of Fame since I was a kid. When he didn't get
Yeah,
in this year, I was kind of
yeah,
depressed. So it hit me hard. I mean, I know it's just baseball. I know it's just the Hall of Fame, but I was like, I really felt like it was his year, and I was just nothing against Jeff Kent, but I just really couldn't bring myself to be like, yay, Jeff Kent, and uh,
yeah.
because
Well,
I'm
I tell you, I mean, when the Braves were coming into town, when they had Murphy, and who was the other guy that was so great with them?
Horner, Bob Horner.
Horner, yeah, when they
Yeah,
had Murphy and Horner, but particularly Murphy.
yeah,
When they were going to be rolling into town, it was Murphy's coming into town with the Braves.
yeah.
Nobody ever said that about Jeff Kent.
No, no. And not only that, I was saying to people, I'm like, if Dale Murphy gets in the Hall of Fame, the phrase America's team is going to be on his plaque because you've got this fame factor of the nationally broadcast Braves. Everyone in America is watching Dale Murphy, two-time MVP,
Yeah,
statistical and arguments to be one of the best players in baseball in the 80s. And it's like, why is this guy not? Again, he didn't hit the 500 home runs, didn't hit some of the marks, had a lower batting
yeah,
average, struck out a lot, but it's like you gotta get Dale Murphy in the Hall of Fame. He's
yeah.
going to be on the ballot, or should be on the Veterans Committee ballot again in 2028. So
Mhm.
there's a coalition of fans out there that have been pushing for his induction, and the fellowship of Dale Murphy Hall of Fame enthusiasts is just growing stronger by the day. But that's a conversation for another time and place. Before we part here, Dan, I wanted to mention one or two things. I don't want to end on a downer, so I'll say this now, and then we'll talk about some other things. But I love music. I love baseball. I love your baseball songs. I've had Chuck Brodsky on the podcast. There's not a lot of people that write baseball songs. One of my favorite baseball songs out there is a song about the Doc Ellis LSD no hitter. Chuck has a great song about it, but the great Todd Snyder also had one, and we lost Todd last
Yeah.
year. I don't know if you had any. I don't know if you know him or if you were a fan or not. If you had any thoughts, but I kind of eulogized him on one of my episodes. So I want to give you an opportunity if you had any thoughts to share about Todd.
Well, he was a great songwriter, great performer. He touched an awful lot of people. I got to play a couple of shows with him along the way. I didn't know him near as well as a lot of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, we obviously lost a great one.
Yeah, he was one of the greats. I've been a fan of him for years. I've mentioned him on the podcast. When I'm having a bad day, I'll go on YouTube sometimes and watch him tell stories because he was funny. He was just so naturally funny to tell stories, and he'd work baseball into the stories. As one of his stories would involve, I'm just at home. I got this baseball package. He loved to mention baseball, in his stories. So we'll miss Todd. He was a great songwriter. He had a great song about the Doc Ellis LSD no hitter. So rest in peace, Todd. But I don't want to end on a downer. I want to end on some high notes. Speaking of playing live, you're going to be hitting the road soon. I'm looking at your upcoming shows here. Looks like January 13th, 2026. You're going to be in Austin, Texas.
That's right. And I'm sharing a night with Matt the electrician, who's also a great baseball guy, and weaves that into a lot of his songs. So we'll probably bat that around a bit.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And I'm looking here. I'll plug you. You got the January 16th, the 30A Songwriters Festival. I'm jealous. I've been wanting to go there for years down in Key
Oh,
West.
it's so fun. It's like, it's really, yeah, it's really chill. And like, there's hundreds of really, really great songwriters, and you just kind of wander from place to place. It's that whole weekend. So
Yeah.
I've been doing that for probably 10 years now.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I've seen a lot of clips on YouTube and stuff from people that are playing. I'm like, I got to go watch that someday. It looks amazing.
The
And I
last time
want.
I saw Prine was there,
Oh,
in
really?
fact. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. Very cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another one of the greats. We lost him to COVID in 2020. John, and I don't. We could talk another hour about this, but I know we talked about Steve Goodman last time you were on the show. Another great baseball songwriter,
Oh, yeah.
and Brian's friend.
Yeah.
I want to mention last you are. I can't have this episode with my Atlanta hat and my Dale Murphy jersey without mentioning you're going to be playing Eddie's Attic on January 19th, 2026. If you don't get snowed in, I, I hyped you up to a lot of friends last year. I was like, Dan, you got to go see Dan. And they're like, it's snowing. So
But, it was the most ridiculous
yeah.
snowed out show ever. They called it, I guess, Atlanta, they don't like driving on the ice. I can understand that. But they called it at about, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the afternoon. And then it got nice and it was completely fine. And it could have been. So, anyway, I'm hoping it comes off this
It's on
time.
brand. I grew up in Atlanta, and when they would just mention the word frost on the news, schools closed.
Boom.
We loved it. No
Yeah,
complaints as a kid. We
of
loved
course.
it. And everyone makes
Yeah.
a run on the grocery store and buys milk, eggs, and bread. The joke is that if snow's coming, you got to make French toast. That's what people
Yeah.
do down there. So
Well,
fingers crossed you don't get snowed in. I'm hyping you up to my friends and my family in Atlanta to go check you out. So if hopefully
appreciate it.
yeah, hopefully they'll come. And if you meet anyone that says Russell sent me here, I'm doing my part to support you, Dan. And if you're ever out in Vegas, I got to catch a show someday. I got to catch a show. So if you're out in Vegas, let me
I'll
know.
do my best to get out there. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, Dan, I don't want to keep any more of your time. I owe you a very large debt of gratitude for being my first guest and now my first return guest. I enjoyed going through the list with you. I don't know if there's anything you want to add before we leave, or if we're at a good point to just sign off, but I'll give you the floor.
Well, I think so. I mean, as you say, I'm sure my Mets fans my Mets friends would want to probably put in a pitch for David Wright. I know he was injured a lot. I know he
Yeah.
was kind of the cornerstone of that team when he was right. So it's all, as you say, it's all a great conversation, and I'm glad that you're doing this and keeping the conversations going. And I really appreciate being part of it.
Well, I'm glad to have you as part of it, Dan. Take care. I know you got a lot of work to do. You got to pack for your tour.
Yeah.
So good luck to you. Stay safe on the road, and we'll be talking to you soon, Dan. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. We'll see you.
All right. Take care, Dan. Bye. Dan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate your ongoing support, and I wish you all the best as you embark on your musical voyages in 2026. Before we sign off, I have a brief editor's note. Earlier on this episode, I said that Omar Vizquel was third all-time in putouts at shortstop. Omar is third all-time in assists at shortstop, not putouts. I also wanted to clarify my answers to two of Dan's questions. The first was about how many people were in the Hall of Fame and whether there were any broadcasters inducted. I misspoke when I said there were announcers in the Hall of Fame. In 1978, the Hall of Fame created the Ford C. Frick Award, presented annually to a broadcaster who makes, quote, major contributions to baseball. Many of our favorite announcers have won the award, including Bob Uecker, Harry Carey, and of course the great Vin Scully. But the recipients of this award are not, quote, inducted into the Hall of Fame and do not have a plaque. Nevertheless, they are honored and mentioned at the Hall of Fame, so I know we're splitting hairs here, but technically Vin Scully et al. Are not in, air quotes, the Hall of Fame, but have nevertheless been honored and recognized. Finally, Pete Rose will be eligible to appear on the Classic Baseball Era ballot voted on in December 2027 for induction into the class of 2028. So right around the corner. On that note, I'll play you out with Dan's song about Pete Rose called Gamblin' With My Love. Until our next episode, remember, when life gets you down, stop what you're doing and watch a baseball game.
It's gonna be shoeless Joe Jackson calling from Tangiers. Says, Commissioner, if you don't throw him out, what have I been doing all these years? Bagging groceries and painting houses, having a beg and steal and rob. He tries to grab the receiver, says I can tell you stuff about Ty Cobb.